Hey, it's not Dan. What's going on, everybody? It's Brian, aka Hero Pool here on the mainstream. Hope everybody's having a great day wherever you are. If you're listening to the recording, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Would really appreciate that. We got a great show today. And I know we say that all the time, but I'm going
It
to
is
learn
great every
something.
time.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Trym. Appreciate that. I'm going to learn something today, and I'd love to learn. So we got Trym Bruset with us, the product manager from Hydra, from the IOG team. Trym, how you been, my man?
I've been very good, thank you. I've been looking forward to this actually. I've been following your podcast for a little while, and yeah, I mean it's I really appreciate these long form and kind of going a little bit on topic, a little bit out of topic, talking about general Cardano stuff. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to get into it. And obviously, I'm here to talk about Hydra, but there's a bunch of other topics as well that I'd like to touch on because there's so much going on at the moment.
Oh my, there is. And me and you have actually talked here a little bit prior to the show, and there's some interesting things that we're definitely going to touch base on. So you're going to want to make sure that you stay tuned. Share this out wherever you are. Much appreciated. But we are going to just kind of jump into Hydra first because to me, that's really interesting. I know you talk about it all the time. So you're like, Hydra, right? But let's be honest. Not a lot of people know everything that's going on with Hydra or how to access the information. So let's jump in. But let's talk about you first and find out a little bit about you and who you are and your past experiences, because I was looking over kind of some of the things that you've done in the past. And to be honest, man, like it's a pretty extensive history of things that you have done, right? So
yeah, I mean it's one of those things where you can't really sum it up and still do it justice. But very briefly, I have a background in mathematics, pure mathematics and mathematical logic. That's what I did my master's in. And then I transitioned into computer science after that. So I actually have 2 bachelor's degrees. And then I realized that you can either chase grants forever in academia, or you can transition into industry. So worked in data science for a while, doing some algorithm research and a lot of data visualization, some index work in the maritime sector, where we used radar technology and a bunch of different things. But then I actually transitioned full time into the Web3 ecosystem with Iagon, as they were transitioning, taking their solution from Ethereum and moving over to Cardano. So I helped them sort of in that period, redefining how the product worked and what the token utility was supposed to be, and I created the file distribution algorithm that they use. So that was a lot of fun actually. They're based here in Norway as well. I'm based in Norway, so it was a really good fit. After that, I worked I took a little spin through Meld, working on their lending and borrowing protocol. Which was also a very good learning opportunity. I learned so much about DeFi and sort of the inner workings of the sort of very nitty-gritty details about what actually happens during DeFi activity. From the time you sign a transaction to it's submitted, and via the mempools and all of this, and all of the sort of steps that go into these things, which ultimately kind of led me to where I am today, which is working for IOG. Before I joined IOG, I actually was working on some Hydra applications myself, but then transitioned into it, working on partner chains first. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Trym. How are you?
Very good. How about you?
I'm good. Nice glasses.
Yeah, thank you.
You talking about the one on him or the ones on Hosky behind him?
Oh, yeah, these ones.
Well, that's not really Hosky. I know Hosky. First of all, Hosky doesn't wear glasses; he wears contacts.
Yes, he does.
Okay, so that's fair. Like the one thing. But actually, I like it because your entire ensemble really matches with Palm.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like the blue and green thing, right?
Yeah, we're like
Yeah.
matchy right now. All right,
Not
so
bad,
just
not
just
bad.
give me. Wait, where are you? Yeah, give me 5. Give me there. Come on, yeah, no, thank you.
Oh, wait.
Smash the camera. I like that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, come on, man, come on, you can do it. Didn't you ever see
There.
the Brady Bunch? Like, probably not.
Mm.
You don't, you know, I give these references. I'm like, in the 90s,
Mm.
people would get them, maybe like 10,
Yeah.
15 years ago, but now people are like, the Brady who? I know Tom
Mm.
Brady. He used to play football when I was a toddler.
Yeah, no, I remember the Brady Bunch being on, but I didn't watch it. It was I don't think we had the right channels here. We only had like the really local
Well,
stuff.
if you didn't have the Brady Bunch on, you had the wrong channels.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I got to tell you that. So, okay. I mean, you know what? I got to confess. I was listening, like I was eavesdropping on what you guys are saying, you know, back in the back of the proverbial stage, which is basically, you know, whatever you want to call it. And so, you know, you told me, well, first of all, you said you're from Norway. And for some reason, the last time somebody told me that they're from Norway, I got it confused with Denmark.
No. That's a cardinal sin right there.
Listen, because I worked with Swedes and I said, wait a second. So don't you sound like you speak when you speak like you have a hot potato in your mouth? They're like, no, man, that's Danes.
Yeah, that is Danes. That is 100% Danes.
Yeah, so I am not, listen, I am not here to make that mistake again. I'm just saying I'm referencing a previous mistake, okay? This is like a redundancy test.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, we're getting into programmy, you know, computery things right now, and I wanted to sound like one of the cool kids.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Nice try. Nice try.
Yeah. For people who don't know though, like the Scandinavian languages, like not Finnish obviously, but with Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish, we can understand each other. Although Danish is distinctly less, pronounced. It's like, you know, if you get a Swede or a Norwegian drunk, like they will sound more and more Danish as the evening goes along. But you know, we can sort of understand each other. It's like a very, very, very strong dialect. But yeah, it's they are sort of mutually understandable.
Well, that's good because I know none of them. They all sound like IKEA to me, which is Swedish. I know it's Swedish, okay, but it's like, you know.
Well, I heard you speak a bunch of languages, don't you? Like Russian and Japanese and
yeah, some English and, you know, fractions of other ones, but it's not no, you know, I don't speak Danish, I don't speak Finnish, I don't speak Swedish, I don't, you know, anyway, none of those. Okay, so I feel totally left out.
It's really unfair.
You got like one over me, you know, but I must say that I did watch a TV show called Lilyhammer.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that was a really good TV show with the guy from The Sopranos and the E Street Band and whatnot. I forgot his name anyway. Yeah, that Brian, don't make that face. Don't do it.
I actually remember when they were filming that, because it's like an hour drive from here. Lilyhammer is a real place. And
well,
yeah,
they had the Olympics there, so I hope so. You know, I hope it wasn't like a site op, you
like
know,
a VR thing.
In Lilyhammer, it's you know, Kubrick. It's Kubrick.
Yep.
It's all done in a studio. You know, Lilyhammer doesn't really exist. It's not a real place. It's like Narnia.
It's like Narnia.
Yeah, I listen. Anyway,
Oh,
listen. Speaking of computery things, you know, smart things that, you know, I try to sound like I know. Okay, let's get into Hydra, right? It's just project.
Product. Don't get that wrong.
Product manager for Hydra. Yeah. Okay. I can read. Okay. I did graduate high school, kind of. Yeah. I heard you had like 15 bachelor's degrees. I got like 0 bachelor's degrees. I just kind of went to college and then kind of dropped out to do business and do programming and became a, you know, became
honestly, not a bad way to go about it. I do feel that sometimes university can be a little bit overrated, especially when it comes to software engineering. Like, it's a practical discipline. You learn better by doing than by sitting in a classroom. But neither here nor there.
Well, so I'll tell you. So from one side, and I'll tell you. Okay, so I finished 3 years of university, and I stopped because I actually got a software contract, and this was around the .com boom, and so if you knew how to do this stuff, it's just kind of like getting money kind of thrown at you, and I was like 19-ish, and like, oh, wait a second. Oh, hey, you're going to give me what, like 60K? And, back in the day, 60K is like
that was actual money then.
Today, to do website stuff. I'm like, I just do that stuff just to do it. Oh, okay. So it just made sense. But then, I got to say, I do regret not finishing school. And I'll tell you why. I have a lot of respect for people who spend the time to get the degree, right? To go the way, to be an academic, to do research, like to get to that point. I really respect that. And sometimes I kind of think to myself, I'm like, you know what? Back then, when you're 19, 20, 21, and it's like, shit, I don't want to spend another 3-4 years in college. And when you're 46, I'm like, what the hell is 3-4 years? I could have done that. What the hell?
Exactly.
Instead of being 19 when I got my first job, it would have been like 23 or 24, 25. Who gives a crap? But hindsight is 2020. So I don't want to discount that at all. I have the highest respect for what you did, for really kind of digging into the science. I just kind of got into like the into the nitty gritty, like give me money for doing computery stuff, and just did that.
I had to take the long way around to get to the same point. But the good thing about that was like the journey through, especially the mathematics part is something that I've had surprisingly lots a surprising amount of application for, like, even the really, really pure mathematics stuff. Like my major was in algebraic topology, which is way far out there field. Like it's something that if you explained it to someone, they were just like, well, how can you even use this?
I didn't know how to spell that. Okay, so absolutely.
And I kid you not, like my first job out of uni, working as a data scientist, like a couple of weeks in, and I was just like, yep, I'm going to apply this thing. And it was just like just an immediate application. And it was an industry problem that had been open since the 80s of how to like process some data stuff. And there was I think the first paper on how to like approach this problem was from 1993. And I was looking through all of the stuff, and it was just like, it was very clear that physicists had tried to solve this problem. And the way that they went about it was, because they didn't know the math to do this properly, it was just such a bad solution. It would take forever to calculate. It was super sensitive to noise, and it was just like a bad solution. Whereas, if you knew the appropriate maths, it was just like, okay, I'll just apply this thing, and it's going to be like the best, it speeds it up, makes it much more robust, and it's just like a natural fit. So even really pure math stuff, I've had a lot of applications for already. Same thing actually with in Igon as well. Like I was just mentioning with the file distribution algorithm stuff. Like math, it's really everywhere. It's the universal glue that keeps everything together. So if you learn math, then everything in life becomes easier.
You know what my favorite TV show of all time is? It's a show called Numbers, and it's about a guy who's a math genius, right?
Yeah, it's about a guy who
writes algorithms to solve crimes. Like, it's one of my favorite
I saw that.
Yeah.
And before that, he was in Adam's Family Values.
Yeah.
It's anyway. That's listen, for me, I kind of also, it took me a while to really warm up to math as being just a thing that doesn't put me to sleep, because don't get me, don't take this the wrong way. Like I actually, I had to get more mature in my thinking to actually understand how important it is, because I'm a fan of like all the SETI stuff and Carl Sagan. I'm a big fan of Carl Sagan and Arthur C. Clarke and all they're always talking about math and communicating with math and how like in contact basically they communicated with math and prime numbers is like the universal language and all this stuff, and I'm just something about math just didn't add up for me.
Yeah, pun intended.
But what I realized as I got older is that I'm not bad at math. I'm actually good at math. It's just I'm too lazy for it.
And you might be exposed to the wrong type of math, honestly, because the thing is, I didn't like math until I started university, and I was intending to study physics because I wanted to get into acoustics and like architecture stuff, and then I took a couple of math classes and I was just like, whoa, what is this thing? Because in primary school it's like whatever, but when you get to university level, it's a completely different beast. It's it gets you addicted, man. It really it's something else. But
I got rugged by algebra. It's easy. He made this whole thing up, and I'm just not into it. I don't know.
But if you want to like something entertaining with math, I really recommend Martin Gardner. He made a couple of books. I have a bunch of them, and it's just all like small little tidbits of interesting things from math. So really, if anyone's interested in like they don't know that much math, but they're interested in the field, look at Martin Gardner. Like he's a fantastic author. He really does well to expose a lot of this stuff.
Actually, I remember one of the first books. Well, my dad was like forcing me to read books when I was a kid. He's visiting me right now in Japan. I'm gonna give him shit about that. I'm like, Dad, why'd you make me read?
I'm hoping that he makes you go read the Hydra documents. Because
so we'll get hydrated in a second here. So what I was gonna say is that there were some apparently Russians and Soviets and stuff were good at math too. Apparently, who knew? These guys
who
did
knew, right?
Stuff. And I actually read one of my favorite books when I was a kid was actually it's just called in translated into English, it's called Fascinating Math, Fascinating Physics. So this guy, his name was Perelman. He Isaac Perelman or something like that.
Yeah. The guy that rejected the Fields Medal, isn't it?
But probably, yeah. I just remember reading books by him when I was a kid. Well, probably that guy. I mean, if that guy was around like mid-century-ish, or maybe actually the 30s or something like that, 30s or 40s before the war, that's probably him. And and so I read books by him, and that was actually really interesting. And that's actually what got me into physics and then astronomy and all this other stuff. And I must say that if it's presented in the right way, if it's presented in a non-boring, like in a non-like, okay, well, add these things and then do these things and then order of operations and then PEMDAS and SHMEMDAS and whatever divided by 0 and all this crap. And I mean, and that, don't get me wrong, it's important crap, but it's still kind of boring. When you get into the nitty-gritty, when you get actually the use cases, that's when it gets interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, speaking of use cases, right? You are the product manager for Hydra, right? That's what your title.
That's what it says on the screen. So it needs to
that's what it says on the screen. Yeah. So I mean, it's probably glued to your camera and a microscopic little thing, and that is really good because the quality is really good on that. Now, okay, so the first thing I'm gonna ask about Hydra is not necessarily what it is, right? Okay, we'll get into that later.
Yep.
What I would like to actually start with Hydra is, okay, so there is a misunderstanding in the Cardano community about what Hydra really does.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, to put it lightly, okay? Mm-hmm. And so the first thing I would like to ask you is to clear up the, Cardano will do million, billion, bajillion TPS when Hydra goes live.
Yeah.
Because that's a thing, and I'm like, obviously I've been in Cardano from like before the beginning. So I get a little bit like annoyed when people talk shit about it without merit. but I also kind of get annoyed when people kind of try to defend it with the wrong facts.
Yeah.
Because there's enough to really show that this is a superior ecosystem. But can you please clear that up for everybody? So, what is the deal with where? First of all, where did the million transactions per second come from?
Mhm.
What is the context of that, right? And
Yeah.
just basically, how does Hydra really help the TPS thingy that we're so obsessed about in the blockchain space, which I actually don't think is necessarily an L1 like super duper thing that everybody needs to concentrate on. But please go on and kind of give us that breakdown, because I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the first there's multiple misconceptions in exactly that statement, right? That you presented, and the first of them is like when Hydra goes live. Hydra's been live for a year. You go figure. You can use it right now on mainnet. It's there. Everything's open source. You can go to, so on the topic of reading, hydra.family is the website where you can read about Hydra. We just revamped the landing page, so it's a little bit more approachable for people. But that aside, like this thing is live. We did a demo at Rare Evo with the Hydra Doom thing. We can maybe talk about that a little bit later as well. But this thing has been live for a while, right? It's not canceled. It's not some faraway future. It's here already. We're expanding it. We're adding to it. We're developing it. But it is currently usable in the form that it is right now, right? So, and it's a scaling solution for Cardano. So Cardano has scaling already. We have a lot of scaling plans, like layouts and a lot of these other things that are coming down the line along with partner chains. But we already have Hydra, right? It's live. You can use it. But it is that, right? So it's a scaling solution. But a misconception that I've heard, which I find really interesting, is some people got the impression that Hydra is something that you connect to your stake pool, and it makes it 1,000 times faster, right? And it's I can get kind of why people get that impression, but before I explain what it is and sort of how it works, the 1 million TPS metric that you quoted, right? Where did that come from? So initially, before the actual Hydra protocol was developed, there was research, right? Like all of this is based on research, peer-reviewed research that published. You can go and look at the papers as well. Where some of the simulations estimated that, under certain conditions, a Hydra head would likely be able to run at least 1,000 transactions per second. And because Hydra heads, the real benefit of Hydra heads is that you can scale them up in parallel. So you can spin up multiple in parallel or sort of scale it horizontally. Which means that for every Hydra head you have open, you would have 1,000 TPS. So, the reasoning goes, if you have 1,000 of them, you would have 1 million TPS, right? As potential throughput. But there's no cap to how many Hydra heads you can have open. And obviously, this was a simulation. This was before, a lot of the benchmarking was done. And the actual throughput for a single Hydra head depends on a multitude of factors. One of which is how complex is the transactions that you're running. So for the Hydra Doom thing, for example, we were running smart contract transactions. So we did a little bit of validation and we had a lot of data in each transaction. So we benchmarked the throughput to about 280 transactions per second per Hydra head. But again, you can spin up as many as you want in parallel. So as long as your application allows for that, the actual throughput is, uncapped, as it were. But the question is, well, a follow-up question is like, how does it actually work, right? It doesn't make your stake pool faster. Hydra is a layer 2 scaling solution that is quite unique in the space. It's not terribly similar to other things that people are familiar with, but a useful analogy is the Lightning Network, right, which is a state channel solution as well on Bitcoin. But the thing is, with Lightning, you could only have 2 people in a state channel, and you could only transfer Bitcoin. That's the only thing you can do. Whereas with Hydra, you can have multiple participants, and you can execute smart contracts because it's isomorphic to the layer 1. So you can run the same scripts. You can have different assets. You can have any Cardano native token in there that you want. So it's a lot more flexible than Lightning. So an analogy that I well, to draw a parallel, something people are much more familiar with is rollups, right? So optimistic rollups or ZK rollups. But the thing about those is they are permanent, right? So once you sort of deploy it, it's kind of set in stone. It's not really, you can update it, through some mechanisms, but it's not something that you do particularly often. Whereas with a Hydra head, it's kind of intended to be opened. You do a bunch of stuff and then you close it down. So it's sort of intended to have a life cycle, right? That it starts and then it ends, which is super useful for a bunch of applications, especially something that needs to be a little bit more adaptable or a little bit more flexible, or that you can update, and because it has this sort of fixed life cycle, or intended fixed life cycle, something like a roll-up, you would never set the fees to be actually zero, because you would immediately be DDoSed and you wouldn't be able to update the network, and you would just have a really bad time. Whereas with something like Hydra, it's not intended to be forever, and you can control sort of who submits stuff into it anyway, so you can have literally zero fees when you do stuff in there. Another really good thing is there's no blocks in Hydra. So when a transaction is submitted into a Hydra head and it's seen by all of the node operators and validated, it's instantly final, which, how long that takes depends on how many node operators you have. But in the Hydra Doom thing, for example, we only had a single operator, which is also possible, right? You can have a single node operator and then someone connecting to it from the outside, which allows you to run Doom in real time. Multiple people in a single Hydra head, right? Which is what we demoed at Rare Evo. And then again in Token 2049, where we met you guys and you got to play it, right? It was I think we have a photo of it as well. So was it choppy? Was it, how performant would you say it was? Did you notice a difference?
No. I mean, there I am with my head cut off. Yeah, thanks for that framing, whoever. Anyway,
that's what you get for being like 6'7", right?
And you're standing beside Samuel. He's not that tall. And you're a giant.
Look, okay. In the Lord of the Rings, the wizard didn't have that problem with Frodo. They always got into a frame. It was never a problem. So anyway, we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that later. That was actually really good. I mean, I must say that the play of the Doom play was just as smooth as I remember. Doing it on my Cyrix 686.
Wow.
Back in the day, or even my Pentium 2 when I got the money to upgrade to that to the more expensive processors. And well, actually, no, I went to AMD after that, and I was kind of like an I was in the never Pentium crowd for a while. But anyway, because it was very smooth.
Because
it was
part
very
of the appeal of this particular way of demoing it, right? Because doing Doom on Hydra, it's completely overkill, right? It's a very silly thing to do. But if you're looking at throughput and you're looking at consistency and you're looking at the capabilities of this node, one of the easiest things to spot if it isn't performing is if you're playing a game, right? Because like if you lose one frame, you will notice it. It will feel like lag, right? Whereas if you're like showcasing something like a poker game or whatever, like you wouldn't notice if it was like 2 or 3 milliseconds too late. Like you wouldn't notice that. Yeah. But when you're playing a game, 35 frames per second, 35 transactions per second, you notice it immediately if there's a delay. So yeah, but by the way, while we have this screen up, a fun fact, because one thing is the moment-to-moment throughput or capacity of Hydra, but during the Rare Evo demo, we actually spun up a bunch of different Hydra heads, and we allowed people to connect from all over the world. And during I think it was 78 hours that we left it open, we ended up doing 106 million transactions, which I think on average is like 350 transactions per second or something like that. But the average isn't the interesting part. We actually left it open because passing 100 million is obviously fun. It's a big round number, but it's also through this one single event using Hydra, we processed more transactions than the entire history of the Cardano mainnet, right? And the when you're using Hydra, the benefit is it doesn't matter if you do 3 transactions or 300 million transactions. It doesn't matter from the perspective of the main chain. You're taking congestion and traffic away from the main chain, and you're only settling the end state. So when you want to use, when you have whatever it is that you sort of consider final, you can use the main chain, the Cardano mainnet, for settlement, which is what it's really intended for. Whereas you can use, Hydra as a sort of canonical computation layer, right? Which, if you go back to Charles's whiteboard video, he talks about, the computation layer and the settlement layer. This is exactly the kind of stuff that he was talking about, right? So it's a really interesting sort of showcase and example of the current scaling of Cardano that is live right now.
Yeah, I remember that because I was actually, and I think maybe it's still wandering the internet somewhere, but I actually did VO on one of the first Cardano commercial thingies that we did even before Daedalus was out. And I remember saying, part of the script was, Cardano is divided into layers: Cardano SL, Cardano EL, and Cardano AL. Right. So that basically is, that's happening right now, because also there's FUD out there. Oh, well, they did away with did away with the whole settlement layer and computational layer and, an application layer thing and blah, blah, blah. And they actually didn't.
No. I mean, it changed name for sure, but
it just changed the name. Yeah. The name's changed, but really the technology is there. And so I also wanted to kind of get into that with you, and as far as need for TPS, do you feel that it is one of the the golden meccas of the blockchain space to have high TPS on an L1? Just really, like, what do you think about that?
I mean, TPS is a vanity metric at the end of the day, right? Like the really important parts, because you got to ask yourself, why are we here, right? What's the point of blockchain technology, if anything? The real point of blockchain technology is to have a robust, always available network that you can use for settlement that isn't centrally controlled, right? Like it's a permanent record, and that's the ideal use case for it. Bitcoin is obviously really good for that, but it can't do anything, right? You can't do any sort of programmability, etc. But if you move into scalability of the layer 1 as a priority, and you sacrifice decentralization, then you're going to see, you're going to have downtime, which is, in my opinion, completely unacceptable for a blockchain. It shouldn't happen, just categorically. If it is a blockchain, it shouldn't have downtime. Like, obviously, during a particularly contentious hard fork or something like that, it's a different setting. But like during regular operation, it shouldn't have downtime, just period. That's not how you're supposed to design a network like this. So
yeah. No, absolutely. I just wanted to kind of throw that in there because we have kind of gone away from the concept of zero fault tolerance, and that is the way the software needs to be built and run, with zero fault tolerance. Is basically, and this is something I remember when I was doing my my Cardano evangelism back in 17 and 18. I remember kind of talking about that Cardano is built with zero fault tolerance, meaning that this is how you build medical software, or this is how you build
aerospace.
Exactly, aerospace software, right? So like, I mean, like you're on a plane and your computer shuts down. That sucks. That's not going to work out. It's like you don't want to have crashes with that software. You're on
Yeah.
You know, like you're on life support and that software crashes. Not a good look.
Nope.
Um,
And at the end of the day as well, it's like, you know, what's the cost of getting, well, one thing is the sacrifice of this zero fault tolerance, right? That is a cost, but getting a high throughput system and pretending it's a blockchain is a lot cheaper than making an actually decentralized system and trying to scale it up to become gradually faster and faster. Getting to the, because I consider TPS a complete vanity metric, which is kind of fun. And like, you know, the Doom thing is 100% playing into this, right? Like it's something that is intended to be a little bit fun, a little bit viral, a little bit, you know, like people can play it and you get big numbers, right? Like I think we did like 7,500 TPS or something during Rare Evo, which is nothing compared to what the system can actually do, right? If you really push it. But I'm acutely aware of that this is a vanity metric, and one of the sort of cool things about this is we're kind of proving how easy it is to get these high numbers, right? With something like Hydra, it's like, okay, well, getting up to very high throughputs isn't that difficult. Making a decentralized network that is as robust as Cardano is, with an ecosystem that is as robust socially as Cardano is, and then having governance to run the whole thing, that is hard. You cannot buy that. You cannot have, you know, 2-3 VC firms come in, put in some, you know, seed funding, whatever, get some token allocation, and then you're there. No. That's not how that works, right? You're never going to be able to buy something like that.
well,
So
yeah, I mean, I think, listen, I think that, you know, one of the biggest kind of falsehoods of the space is basically this notion that you need high TPS to be able to process a lot of payments, right? Because people think, oh, well, blockchain, crypto, you got to do payments on crypto. It's like, well, my personal stance is that we're not going to have crypto payments, like real, you know, cryptocurrency payments, for quite a while, because it's just too volatile, right? So you don't want to have, I mean, you even have, I mean, you even have a whole market with forex exchange, right? So you got this whole, you know, this whole market with forex trading that basically does that with regular currencies, and those things don't even do even, you know, 1/10 of the volatility that crypto does. You know, you don't want to have an asset that you basically, you know, got into at one price and then it goes down, you know, like you make a payment, but then it goes down 10% or 20% or 30% in one day. It's just not a viable thing to do, because, like, you know, I mean, economies whose fiat does that are not very good economies. They have problems, right? So how can you expect people to actually take that seriously? So I think personally, and as you said, that it's a vanity metric because it is not properly, it's out of context, right? Because people think, okay, well, you look at the Visa network, that thing processes like 40,000 transactions per second or something like that, right? Or I don't know what, it's some insanely large number, right? So we have to be like Visa. We have to be like Visa. Well, first of all, Visa is centralized. Okay, that's number one. Second of all, Visa is not TCP/IP. If you look at that context, right? So Visa is utilizing the internet, but is not. We didn't take TCP/IP and make new TCP/IP that's faster to compensate for what Visa or others, you know, other use cases needed. They made their own network that uses transfer control protocol and does its own thing, right? And some of it is actually a closed network. So, you know, it's like the right tool for the right job, and that's what, you know, I think is really great about Hydra, is because it is that tool, right? So in case you need fast transactions, fast finality, all these things, Hydra is it. But I don't necessarily think that Cardano itself, if it's as supposed to be this thing that they will want it to be, should have, you know, like 1 million transactions per second. I personally don't think there is a need for that. I think that scalability, security, and decentralization are more important than just straight up TPS BS, right? And that's why I think, you know, it's very important to people to understand what Hydra does. It's also, look, I also kind of don't think that people really get it, because even in the Cardano community, the people don't really know Hydra is live. It's there for you to use, right? I mean, it's there, right?
Yeah.
You can use it
Yeah.
today.
It's there. You can download it and run it today.
And I think that kind of goes to the question that we just got, right? Are there teams working with the product? Are there apps being developed with Hydra? Is there anything that you can kind of point people in the direction that they can kind of follow along with projects that are working with Hydra?
Yeah, sure. So there's been a revived interest, let's say, after the Hydra Doom thing, and I don't want to, commit on behalf of any of these projects to say that they are building or not, but I can reference, public information at least, right? So
Yeah.
I've seen that the Mesh.js team have started, building some tooling to integrate with Hydra. The Delta DeFi team is experimenting a little bit with it. There's a project called, or there's a team called Blazar Labs that are using or building tokenized wine and supply chain tracking.
Out of Moldova. They were on the show, actually.
Yeah, exactly, and great guys. And I actually pointed them towards Hydra even before I joined the team, and they are using Hydra as a sort of IoT solution, which is a really interesting approach, right? Because you have tokenized wine, it's stored somewhere, i.e. in a warehouse. And there, okay, if you have a $5,000 bottle of wine, you want to make sure that it's treated properly if you want to claim it or sell it on or something. So what they do is that they collect information from IoT devices, temperature, humidity and seismic activity, stuff that could, like get the sediments mixed up and everything. And they keep a constant stream of this into Hydra head, and then the tokens are referencing this state, and it's like it's a whole system that they're working on, and it's a really cool use case. So there are a lot of projects that are building. Again, I've had a bunch of discussions over the past couple of weeks with new projects that are looking to experiment and build new products as well. I think if you look at the upcoming Catalyst round, I'm guessing we're going to see a bunch of Hydra proposals there. So there are definitely people building, but I also know that a lot of projects have been waiting for Hydra to have a certain set of features, right? So, for example, the ability to add funds to an open head and to remove funds without closing the head, which is called incremental commit and decommit. That's a very requested feature. I know because I requested it before I joined IRG, right? And that's coming along now. We have incremental decommits already. We're working on incremental commits, right? So it's really close to getting to that point. And add to that a couple of small technical features, and we're going to get to version 1, which is a proper. The software is ready to use today. But we're adding a bunch of stuff, and we're at some point we're gonna say draw a line in the sand and say, okay, this is version 1, which will include incremental commits, decommits, and a few other bits and bobs. But that doesn't mean the development isn't continuing after that. Like there's a bunch of things we're working on. But yeah, there are definitely projects and products being built. But again, it's building on Cardano is complex.
Yes.
Building with Hydra on Cardano is adding to the complexity, right? Because you need to understand, first of all, how Cardano works so well that you recognize that Hydra is something that you need. Also, your use case needs to fit into the Hydra sort of set of use cases, because Hydra isn't it's not a silver bullet, right? It's not going to work for every single application out there, but it is going to work really well for a bunch of applications, and those are already there's a few of them that are starting to experiment with this already.
Yeah, and you touch base there a little bit. I just want to maybe get some clarification from you, right? You said it's not the solution, the scaling solution for everything, but there are other scaling solutions, right? Such as side chains and those types of things. And you just touch base on that. And then you also brought up something about real world assets that me and you had a very, very interesting conversation on yesterday or Friday that I definitely want to touch base on, because I think it's important that people understand that specific problem. And I know Charles has also touched base on it. So let's come back to that. But
so
other scaling
100%.
solutions.
So scaling solutions, they come in a few different shapes and sizes, right? So you have the scaling solutions that touch layer 1. So Laos, for example, is a very big name in that space at the moment. Peras, sort of, conjunctual to that. You also have layer 2 scaling solutions, right, which are basically separate ledgers that you can use, or sort of they're separate, and then they somehow make their state known back to the layer 1 for settlement every now and again. The layer 2 solutions you can broadly split them up into 3 categories, right? State channels like Lightning Network, Plasma on the EVM, and Hydra. Now, Plasma, just as a little side note, state channels don't work that well on EVM because of the global state and everything. We don't need to get into that, but there is a solution, but it doesn't work that well into EVM, which is, I got this question in Singapore. Why did you guys build on Cardano? And it's like, well, Cardano is really, really uniquely suited for this kind of thing. So it's really something that we don't have in the.
Is that the UTXO model? Is that?
Yes, yes, it is. So state channels is one. Rollups is another one. So you have ZK rollups and optimistic rollups. I know that the Anastasia Labs team are working on this on the Cardano side to make an optimistic rollup. I believe the ZK Fold team is working on a ZK rollup as well. And again, these are like having second mover advantage and the EUTXO model to work with gives us a really, really good edge in the Cardano space for these layer 2, like the rollup space. And the third one is, the side chains business, or what we, the partner chains, side chain kind of thing, where it is a technically a separate chain that has its own sort of consensus model and everything, but it is connected to Cardano or this layer 1 in a way that is sort of unidirectional. So the sidechain can watch or observe the settlement layer or the layer 1 in question, but it is technically able to operate on its own as well. So Midnight would be an example of that.
Yeah, lots of scaling solutions coming up. Dan, I see a smirk on your face. What's going on, buddy?
All this talk about roll-ups makes me think of fruit roll-ups. I'm sorry. I always think about that. Like I miss fruit roll-ups. I got to get me some.
I'll ship you some over, buddy.
Yeah. Just send me. Okay. I mean, just send me some fruit roll-ups and we're good. Okay, because those are really good. And anyway, and yeah. So roll-ups, we're being totally serious, but I keep thinking of fruit roll-ups and just had to get it out there. And listen, let's kind of, we've been talking a lot of computery sciencey stuff, and it's really cool and everything. But you know what? I gotta say, you're kind of husky shill, aren't you?
Please don't buy Husky. Do not buy any Husky. Anyone
right
ever.
So
not shilling.
Reverse psychiatry. Yeah, I get that. Okay. Yeah.
But literally do not buy. Like, if you want some Husky tokens, like, go to the Discord. They give it away all the time. Like, there's no point in buying it ever. No reverse psychology, nothing.
Yeah, but come on, man. Everybody's gonna make bad decisions.
Yeah, that is true. Like, if you want to make some bad decisions, Husky is the place. It's full of idiots like myself.
So you know what I heard? I heard that you're like the unofficial unpaid intern for Husky. Is that true?
Well, I mean, yeah, the title was open, so I just kind of claimed it, and I haven't done anything with it since. I made a couple of videos and like some memes, but because I've seen some of these interns, like the Tap Tools intern and the Mintern, and they're great. I'm not, but no one else was stepping up to the plate, so I did, and I'm floundering on the job, which is very on brand for Husky.
Yeah. Listen. You know what's better than having low expectations? having
No
no expectations, and that's what we
Exactly.
have for you. Okay, we have no
And I'm
expectations
really
at all,
delivering on that.
and you are delivering on above and beyond that. Okay, so that is, I am very, very happy that you are, and anyway, I kind of think of myself as the Elon Musk of Hosky.
Okay, yeah.
I kind of, when Hosky was still Dogo, Cardogo.
Cardogo, yeah.
Cardogio.
I just kind of started talking it up with him, and I said, "Look, it's okay. This guy's not gonna rug you," and he didn't. Like I got rugged by not getting rugged. I mean,
Define rug, because he said that he was going to rug us, and then he hasn't rugged us. So is that technically a rug?
so actually,
I'll tell you. Actually, before you go into that, I had to take matters into my own hands because I was so tired of waiting for the rug that I literally went and I got a custom rug made. So this is my literal Cardano or Husky rug.
Oh, you know what I did? I went even a step further. Okay, a step further. Okay, me and Hosky got rugs for Rare Evo, and then I took his rug. So I rugged him for his rug. Nice. Beat that. That's like a checkmate. Okay,
you reverse rugged Husky.
Yeah,
okay.
might as well just like retire and just go into, I don't know, like bass fishing.
That's peak achievement right there.
That's
so. I just gotta throw that out there. I gotta throw that out there. Now listen, look, I know I can talk all day about Husky, but I'm not going to, because what is there to talk about? He's a pixelated dog on whatever internet and interwebs, and
it's impressive, right? It's Cardano's first stablecoin,
and you're his enabler. You're his enabler. Okay, you are his enabler. Like I think you are actually a secret agent. It's like, I think actually maybe.
Are you really Hosky? No, you're not.
Well, no, I think Charles is Hosky, and he put Trym in the into play. It's like, hey guys, come on, yeah.
Exactly.
Like, come on,
so
guys.
Listen, I really hate to break up the Hosky conversation, but there is something that I really want to, because we're
no, you don't hate it. You don't hate it. What you want to talk about is like serious stuff. So
any attention is way too much. So yes, please change topic.
It's ridiculous. Listen, like okay, Brian, I'll let you do your serious stuff, and you know what? Maybe, just maybe, you can bring start talking about
But this is important, Dan.
And RWAs. Okay, I want you to talk about the RWAs a little bit that you were talking about before. The conversations you guys had, because I mean, we do stuff with RWAs because it's. I mean, you see that.
Keep Palm and tokenize real world assets.
Yeah. So we do stuff with RWAs at Zengate. Yeah. So why don't you talk about our what discussions have you had, guys? Come on, let's bring it out into the open.
Yeah, me and Trym were talking on Friday, and we were talking mostly about assets that are backed by a commodity or maybe a stable coin per se, right? Like USDM, backed by the US dollar, or something as simple as backed by gold. Like if I hold gold in a vault. What happens if there's a fork in the network and now there's two tokens on separate networks that represent that physically backed asset? And I think Charles Trym has even brought that up, and maybe you can go into it a little bit more, because you are definitely know a lot more about it.
Yeah, no, I've been a participant in the debate around the stable coins for a little bit, especially when it comes to the USDC thing and sort of these asset-backed things. But, also, as you say, with gold and even with the wine thing, right? Like, as soon as you have something real that this token represents on chain, and that can be literally anything, right? Like, it can be a part ownership of a mining rig. It can be whatever, right? Like, it doesn't have to be specifically a stable coin, but, some real world asset, tea, for example, right? So if you do actual tokenization of these assets, And you have a claiming process where, okay, I give you this token on the chain, you give me the thing back in the real life. And then, as you say, the network forks, right? This can happen. This has happened in the past. I know a lot of people, especially newcomers to the space, they don't know about these forks, right? With ETH Classic and ETH 2.0. Or
how many times has Bitcoin been forked?
Exactly, like it's been forked a bunch, right? So this can absolutely happen. And there's no, sure, we're better suited to handle it in Cardano and sort of prevent these hostile sort of forks, but it could still happen in Cardano as well. So it's useful to take into consideration. Now the question is, okay, you have a real world asset, and you get this fork. Now there are two tokens with the same claim to a single real world asset. What do you do when it comes to, like, you are the asset provider, or the the person that is accepting tokens and then giving out this thing, like Circle, for example, or Moneta in the USDM case, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Well, the problem, as Charles has pointed out a couple of times in this debate, is in this case, if you have a very, very large real world asset provider, like the likes of Circle or any of these projects, they can effectively decide which fork is the official fork, right? By defining which one they support. So how do you deal with that? Well, I thought, hey, it would be it would be in everyone's best interest, including the providers of these assets, because is that something they are comfortable with, deciding the fate of a fork in this case? Are they happy with this set of circumstances? Probably not, right? So there should probably be a type of protocol or a standard for how to do token claiming that includes the possibility of forking. So imagine you have two forks, single asset with or two assets, one on each fork, with a claim to a single real world asset. If you want to claim this thing in the real world, you want to go and pick up your gold, right, from the vault or something. Then in order to do that, you need to both do the redemption with the token that you have, but also you should show at least something like a proof of burn from the other chain, right? Because presumably when this thing splits, you have the token on both sides. Obviously, when you add the DeFi protocols and trading and stuff into the mix, things get very complicated very fast. So probably it wouldn't be as simple as that. But I think it's really useful and important to actually do that discussion, right? Like run that discussion through, figure out, okay, how do we actually solve this problem? Because if we can solve that problem, suddenly the chain and the ecosystem isn't at risk from having these large centralized actors that do these things, right? Because then suddenly they don't have the choosing power to decide which fork is the legitimate one. Because for all we know, both forks might be legitimate, as was in the Ethereum case, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can see arguments why Ethereum 2 should be the real fork. I can also see arguments for why Ethereum Classic should be the real fork. It's not a like, oh yeah, these guys are obviously wrong kind of thing, right? So having something like this prevents a single person, possibly like a CEO of some company, deciding for the entire ecosystem which one is legitimate.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Dan.
Yeah, I mean, the tokenization is all. I mean, as I said before, RWA is an important buzzword for this coming bull run for obvious reasons that we've went into a few times, and I don't have to go into now. My stance on everything is, well, first of all, just to start, there's different types of tokenization, right? So, like for example, the Palmyra tokenization has to do with provenance, right? And so there are different points in provenance that are verifiable against real world events that have been recorded along as part of the provenance solution that is basically that is referenced by the token that represents it, right? So essentially, our tokenization represents the provenance of a commodity, So it's not necessarily the ownership of the commodity, but it's the provenance of the commodity that really moves along with the commodity itself and is actually just as important as the commodity in many a times. In that case, you have different ways of verifying it, right? So you can have different metrics and say, okay, so this iteration or this state change or this state change of this token happened in this particular time. You can verify it against real world sources, right? Okay, so was this processed? You can go back to the producer. You can go back to the IoT device that recorded the information and say and kind of check against that and say, is this information correct? And again, there's different points where you have that. Now, if you have asset ownership being represented by the token, and that's obviously different because that's not really provenance. That is just ownership, right? It's an ownership certificate. So it just kind of like floats around there and does its own thing. And, value is ascribed into that particular asset. And so at that point, yeah, I do agree with you that if there is a fork, it is an issue unless you have a way to, first of all, yeah, you show proof of burn for the other asset, and then kind of proof of ownership with the wallet or whatnot for the asset at current state. And even then, there should be some sort of a digital credential that also follows it, where you can basically, if you want to actually take delivery. Yeah. Which is also something that we're going to be implementing into Palmyra, and that is digital identities. So it's again, it's an aggregate, right? It's a combination, and it actually specific to a different. I mean, there might be several use cases that it kind of are encompassed by the same solution, but there are going to be different things that happen or need to happen for that particular asset to be, to be redeemable or verifiable in a decentralized way. Because, yeah, I mean, that's actually one of the that's actually an argument for why we should not really just kind of like pay off USDC and just bring them on chain, that Charles made during his speech at Tokyo Tech. Is because if you really look at it, right, USDC and USDT account for the bulk of transactions on Ethereum, right? So if Ethereum has actually the same type of governance model that is being implemented on Cardano, theoretically, you can have a player come in that just can own the network without basically being a part of governance in a valid way, right? You basically, just because you come in there with a bunch of money and you suck up all the transactions, and then you can say, oh well, you dictate what happens to the network, you fork the network, you do whatever you want with the network, and that turns it into a dictatorship. And so I do agree that this is like what you described is in fact the way we should really go about it. We should find the most decentralized, the most I don't want to say fair, because fair should be really determined by the code. The fairness should be determined by code and governance. So
by the fairness principle, ETH Classic is Ethereum, right?
Exactly.
If you're following the sort of code is law thing.
Exactly.
I think,
the DAO hack was actually an exploit of the network, but it wasn't really a hack, in the traditional sense. It just exploited the weakness of the network, which is why
not even the network, right? Like just like the actual DAO smart contract.
Exactly. So that's essentially, I do agree with you on that.
And it's the thing is as well is it's an I don't know, it's a whole ecosystem thing, right? Like any EVM chain, any non-Cardano, non-EVM chain as well, like all the chains care about real world assets, as you say. It's one of the buzzwords going into the next bull market. So it is in everyone's interest to establish a standard like this. And I think ideally, this should really be similar to this what is it, the DREC alliance thing that IOG was joining to try and decentralize recovery mechanisms for wallets. It's something that is in everyone's interest to figure out. So it should be sort of a collaborative effort across the ecosystem, but at least we should make sure that we have a solution at some point, because at some point it will be the next DAO hack version, but with actual real world assets, right? Because at the time of the DAO, we didn't really have that many things going on. It was like, okay, you had these smart contracts, and it was primarily ETH as these, this asset. So we didn't have these asset or these actors with outside, sort of influence over the network. And especially now in the era of governance, we've done a great job with governance to prevent the buildup of bureaucracy. And right, this unaccountable sort of component of governance. So it would be really unfortunate if we end up with outsized influence by centralized actors. And I think we already see some semblance of this with like the buying voting power, and projects voting with funds that are in the DeFi pools, etc. Like that's already kind of shady practices if you ask me. But it is a part of governance, right? And it's something that we need to take a stand on. And this would be even a step removed, right? Because this wouldn't even be on chain. So it's really interesting to see sort of these external things that when you make the model of how to do governance, like you don't necessarily take into account all of the other influencing factors as well, of which this would be one of them, right? And a protocol like this that would enable you to sort of, or enable a real world asset provider to not choose between the different forks would help alleviate some of this influence that they would have.
Yeah, it would help them not to get direct. That's right. That's right. I said it. I did.
That.
Is that Snecker-G?
No, it's just regular monster.
Well, that
I did try the Sneck one at Rare Evo, but I don't know. It wasn't really my thing.
I like it, and I have some in my other room. I actually I'm not a big energy drink person, other than a pre-workout before I go to the gym, but I do actually like the Sneck energy drink. So
I like it how people just call chugging a bunch of caffeine pre-workout now. It's like it's not pre-workout. Like if that's pre-workout,
no, I buy
pre-workout. I pre-workout like 10 times a day because that's how many cups of coffee I drink a day. Or whatever else.
Always pre-workout.
Yeah. I just pre-worked out. I just pre-worked out before I get on this thing. Starbucks help.
I'm going to send you some of the pre-workout I have. I can't say the name because we'll get banned from YouTube. But it's Get Effed, and you'll run laps after drinking it. So
yeah, your body gets like tingly. It's unsettling.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to pre-workout that later.
Trym, it's been really having you on has been really, really educational for me.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate it. And I would like to maybe at some point get you on and have you on a Twitter space just so that we can reach out to that crowd. And
100%.
I'll reach out to you and continue that conversation.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, there's so much more that we could dig into with the Hydra stuff. There's there's so much things that we could dig into, tangentially as well. So I'm happy to
there are plenty of things. Here. I mean, I want to dig into more into the tail stuff and the how you run Hydra heads on other chains. Like for example, Charles actually suggested before that Ergo runs a Hydra head. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to dig into. Unfortunately, we're out of time. And why?
Because we didn't hardly even touch the Doom thing, right? So
we hardly even touched the Doom thing, and that's because Brian makes too many jokes and just gets a little too, just goes into too many tangents about being in a .com boom and all that stuff. So we're gonna have to talk about this, Brian. And plus, you're in Theo's house right now. Okay, you guys are roommates.
Well, I get it now. He's in Greece, so I figured I'd come in our house.
You're in the same house, and then also Fred, from the CF, he also lives with you guys because I've seen him in the same room. doing his
don't be
stuff.
telling people all our secrets, bro. Like,
Well, look,
we're
I mean, you
working
guys
back
should
here.
you guys should try to do different angles of the place because it's like the same thing, And Brian, you kind of look a little pasty and hazy today, so I say just have something.
I need World Mobile in my life, man. The internet in my area has been so horrible lately. I'm gonna go buy a Google phone so that I can scan to prove to you people that in the United States needs just as good as internet service as like I live 60 miles from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and my internet is absolutely horrible. So
Come on, you guys just got the internet in Pittsburgh like 2 months ago, so before that you were still doing like the rotary like.
What the hell? What is a rotary? What are you talking about? Boy, you're old, bro.
Look, we're still doing the war games. Matthew
Are you a
Broderick
boomer?
thing where he
Like-
took the 300 baud modem thing and he put the phone on it, and he connected to Joshua and war games and stuff. Blah blah blah. 80s reference. 80s reference.
Yeah.
Anywho, Trym, thank you so much for coming on the mainstream. It's a pleasure. Thank you for
happy to be here.
Clearing some of these things up for us because we're the meth checks out, as Hosky likes to say, METH. So listen, let's do this again very soon. Thank you so much. So please follow Trym if you like Hydra stuff, if you like Hosky stuff, if you like
primarily Hosky stuff, honestly, on my Twitter. But if you want to, the sort of CTA stuff, like go to hydra.family, read about Hydra. If you want to reach out to me or the team or anyone, reach out to me directly. That's fine. Or go to the IOG Discord. We have like a couple of Hydra channels there, literally open to anyone. Like if there are features that you think are lacking, which is preventing you from picking up Hydra, tell us about it. Like we will prioritize stuff based on what people need, right? So yeah, like get involved, like start experimenting. It's a really fun and really useful tool to pick up for any developers.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the info. Everybody go check out Hydra. Stop giving wrong information about bajillion transactions per second. Come on, guys. This thing is cool without having to give that
false information.
False information. It's not about that. I mean, this thing is way cooler than just a bajillion transactions per second. They don't really do anything. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for being here. Well, Brian, you had no choice, but Trym, thank you. Thank you for being here. And so, I think that's all the time we have for today. And so this is Dan coming to you barely alive from Japan.